In my last video, I talked about an interview that I totally bombed, and if you haven't seen it, go watch that first, and it'll kind of set the stage for this video a bit better. But in this one, I'm going to talk about actually getting that first job and the second interview and only interview that I got that year as well. So coming off of that first interview, I was pretty devastated. I figured no one was going to want me. This lack of C++ experience was just cycling over and over in my head that everyone was going to want this, and I didn't know it, and so I was useless, and there wasn't going to be enough time to learn it, and it's just the spiral just kept going. I was never going to get a job. I still hadn't heard from any other employers, no interviews, just nothing. I came back from that interview and probably same day started firing off some more applications, looking through job postings. I eventually found that there was a career fair coming up at the computer science department. I put that on my calendar, and I was hopeful that that would be a good time to kind of get in front of employers. I also chatted with my co-op coordinator, person kind of like helping me through this process, and they suggested that I work on some kind of a personal project so that I can add that to my resume. And so naturally, it was a game that I decided to build, and I started working on Pong in Java. And when I had time, I would just kind of like chip away at it, make some more progress on it, and eventually I had this kind of pretty basic version of Pong. But Pong is basic, but eventually it kind of had like movement, it had sounds, it had an AI, um, and so I put that on my resume, and then some time passes. I have no idea how much time it really occurred in any of this, and even the order of the story could be completely wrong. Um, but anyways, I get an interview scheduled, and it's this company called iRock2, and they're essentially Guitar Hero, but on the web. This is back when Facebook games were still huge. Maybe they still are. I don't know anyone who plays a Facebook game anymore. And they were based in Kelowna. And so I was pretty excited about this. My entire objective through this process was to get into game development. So having an opportunity to interview at a game development position was huge for me. Um, and so because they weren't in the area, we got a phone call scheduled. It wasn't even a video call. And I booked a room at the co-op office so that I could take it there kind of in privacy and just not have to do it in my tiny little dorm. And so I get there, I'm waiting, and then it's just me, this little like booth essentially, and phone on the table, and the phone rings, and I answer. And I learned a lot, kind of like several years after that interview, thinking back on this interview, because I just come off of this interview where I'm in this room with this person, they're just kind of grilling me on C++ trivia, and I guess we didn't even get into algorithm stuff, but I assume that would have been next. Um, but this interview that I had here was different than anything that I've ever really had. And again, we're just on a phone call, so there couldn't be a whiteboarding question. You couldn't really even ask a coding question, period. Um, and instead, the interview was couldn't have been more than 30 minutes, and the person kind of just asked me about my background. They asked me about why I was interested in the position, and I'm as I would guess, they're kind of just looking to understand like what's my interest level, what's my ability to learn something new based on what I've already done, not based on what I'm happening to do in a coding question in the middle of that interview, where all kinds of things can influence the success of that. Um, and so got into a few things, but obviously I told him about this Pong game. It was kind of the most relevant thing to what we were talking about because if I'm going there, I'm going to be working on some kind of game. So having that experience was super valuable. Um, and even on that phone call, I could immediately understand why I was given that advice to take on that personal project because it kind of helped guide me into what I actually wanted to do. And so by picking Pong, by picking a game development project, I was now more enticing for a game development company to hire. Um, I'm sure that experience would have helped in all kinds of other places, but if I was going somewhere else and doing, whether it's like kind of like firmware or something like that, the experience doesn't carry over in the same way. Um, and so this call kind of finishes up, and I'm left like feeling super comfortable and kind of happy with how the experience went. Um, I'm still super nervous because I feel like it was almost too easy, and I didn't really know what that meant. And so just kind of left, and then the way it essentially worked in that, I forget, they've changed the system a few times, but essentially there's kind of this like ranking process um, for people who give you an offer. And so that deadline for that process was coming up, and so I kind of like just waited my time, and then so now this job fair has come up, and I get myself all dressed up to go to this job fair, print out some fresh resumes, and just before I head out, I decide to check my email kind of one last time, and I get an email that tells me that I have an offer for this job, and I have I don't think I've been so excited in my life at that point. I was really not looking forward to going to the job fair, but it became like very clear that that was the job that I wanted to have. And so I kind of just like did a little dance in my room by myself, like took off my job fair clothes and just kind of put on normal clothes and just kind of like went and celebrated that win. Um, and so that was all exciting, but now I had this whole new thing where I was now gonna have to move myself to Kelowna, figure out what that meant, be there for 4 to 8 months, and just kind of start somewhat a new life there. So, kind of talk about that experience probably in a future video.